The food industry operates under some of the absolute strictest regulatory frameworks in modern business, and there's a really good reason for it. These rules are all designed to protect public health.
I mean, we're talking about millions of people affected by foodborne illnesses every single year. So the stakes for getting food safety right are just incredibly high for everyone involved, from the farm all the way to your fork.
But here's the thing. For those small and medium-sized businesses, the ones that are often the real heart of our local food scene, meeting these critical requirements isn't just a challenge. It can feel like a daily battle for survival.
All right, so how does this whole struggle actually look day to day? Here's what we're going to cover. We'll look at why these rules exist in the first place, the huge hurdles small businesses face, both inside and out, what's really on the line, and then how we can maybe move from all that struggle to some solid structure. First things first, it's so important to get this one thing straight. These rules, they aren't just a bunch of bureaucratic red tape. They are an absolutely fundamental, non-negotiable part of being in this industry.
So when you boil it all down, what are these regulations? Well, they're basically a protective shield. Yeah, they're there to make sure the food we all eat is safe, but just as importantly, they protect the businesses themselves from the absolute catastrophe that can happen if something goes wrong. And that right there brings us to the real heart of the issue. The rules are the same for everyone, but the ability to actually follow them, well, that's a completely different story. And just look at this slide. It lays out the resource gap so clearly, it's almost startling. On one side, you've got these huge corporations with entire departments dedicated to this stuff. And on the other, you have a small business owner who's trying to be the CEO, the head chef, and the food safety expert all at the same time. It's just not a level playing field. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper into those internal struggles. It really comes down to two big things, what you have and what you know. Really, the biggest hurdle, the one you see everywhere, is just a fundamental lack of resources. And we're talking about the big three: money, people, and time. The three things a small business owner feels like they never, ever have enough of. And believe me, this isn't some abstract business school concept. This is real stuff. It's the cost of that new ventilation system you have to put in an old building. It's the salary you just can't afford for a full-time quality manager. And it's the simple fact that there aren't enough hours in the day for the owner to handle all of this on top of, actually running the business. But it's not just about resources. There's also this huge knowledge gap. Think about it. Most food entrepreneurs are amazing bakers or chefs or producers. They're not usually microbiologists or regulatory lawyers. Okay, take something like HACC. You hear that acronym all the time. It stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, and it's basically the gold standard for preventing food safety problems before they even start. But here's the key. It's not just a checklist. It is a deeply scientific process where you have to map out every single step you take, figure out every possible thing that could go wrong, biologically, chemically, physically, and then set up rock-solid controls to stop it from happening. I mean, that is a massive ask for someone who doesn't have a formal background in food science. All right, so if all those internal challenges weren't enough, businesses then have to turn around and face this incredibly complex and, frankly, often confusing world of external demands. And this chart, it does a great job of showing just how messy that world can be. A small producer might have to answer to the feds, their state health department, and local city codes. And on top of all that, they have to meet specific standards from their biggest customers. And guess what? Those rules don't always line up, creating this kind of compliance maze.
So you've got all these different rules coming from all these different places. What do you think becomes the single biggest tripwire? What's the most common reason for failing an audit?
You might be surprised. So often, it comes down to one simple thing: paperwork. The administrative burden of just proving you're doing everything right can become every bit as challenging as actually doing it. See, you're not just making food, you have to document absolutely everything. First, you've got to write out your standard operating procedures, your SOPs for every single task. Then you're keeping daily temperature logs, you're tracking cleaning schedules. You have to write up a report for every little corrective action, log every time a staff member gets trained, and even keep records proving your suppliers are legit. It's this relentless paper trail that is just so hard to keep up with if you don't have dedicated staff and systems. And the pressure to get all of that right is just immense, because the consequences of getting it wrong are, well, they're severe. This is about so much more than just passing an inspection. Getting it wrong can mean product recalls, crippling legal fines, and a total loss of trust from your customers. And for a small brand that you've built from the ground up on your reputation, that can be something you just can't recover from. This quote really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? For a large corporation, a fine is a business expense. For a small business, it can be an existential threat. A big company can absorb a recall, they can pay a fine. It's a line item on a budget. But for a small business, that same event can be a fatal blow. It can threaten the entire company and the livelihoods of everyone who works there. So, wow. Given all of that, how do we move forward? The answer can't be to just give up. It has to be about transforming that constant struggle into a manageable, sustainable structure. And let's be absolutely clear about something. This isn't about lowering food safety standards. Not at all. The goal has to be to provide the right tools, the right support systems that make meeting those incredibly high standards actually achievable for everyone, no matter how big or small their business is. So what does that structure look like? Well, it really rests on 4 key pillars. First up, leadership commitment. This means the owner doesn't just sign off on some policy and forget it. No, they make food safety a visible daily priority. Second, you need practical targeted training. So not some 4-hour lecture on microbiology, but real hands-on training that shows your staff exactly what they need to do at their station. Third, simple, consistent systems. Maybe that means getting rid of messy paper logs and using a simple digital app that sends reminders and makes record-keeping way easier. And finally, accessible professional support. This is huge. It means having an expert you can actually call with a quick question without worrying that it's going to cost you a fortune.
And that really leaves us with a critical question to think about. This isn't just on the shoulders of the small business owner. It's on the entire industry, the regulators, the consultants, the bigger companies, to really think hard about how we can build an ecosystem that supports both flawless food safety and the survival of the vibrant small businesses that our communities really depend on.